Rozenberg, and this is Remy Ilona. Remy has traveled here from Nigeria, well really from Florida. He's studying at the Florida International University, but he comes from Nigeria, from the Igbo tribe, otherwise pronounced Igbo. And Remy's a scholar, was a lawyer in Nigeria, and dropped what he was doing to research the legend or the tradition in his tribe that they actually come from the, I wouldn't use the word the lost tribes of Israel, but I will, the lost tribes of Israel, from the scattered Israelites from 2,000 plus years ago. Remy has done a lot of research and written a few books on the topic. The Igbo people number, I think, about 40 million people, so we're about to have a conversation, and I think it will get interesting. So you're saying that the Igbo are from the tribes of Israel. Now,
Yes.
are you saying this, or the people on the ground in Nigeria also saying this?
Every Igbo says that the Igbos came from Israel. The 40 million Igbo people say that they came from Israel. And an opinion poll has been done. Daniel Lees, who earned his PhD studying the Igbos, who worked at the University of Basel and the Tel Aviv University, conducted an opinion poll. He interviewed 500 Igbos, some in Nigeria, some in Europe, some in America, some in Israel, and 497 say that they believe that Igbos came from Israel, and one said that he has had it, but that he doesn't believe. Two said that they don't believe, but they spoke further, and it was clear that why they don't believe is because they have the wrong notion that there are white people and the black people in the world, and they wrongly believe that the people of Israel are white. They didn't know about the existence of the Ethiopian Jews, and they also did not take cognizance of the fact that a lot of Igbos could comfortably fall into the category of white people from their complexions.
I understand. So time out. This is pretty fascinating. You're saying that there's 40 million people in Nigeria who have an identity that they come from the house of Israel, from the people of Israel.
Yeah, who also have oral traditions to back it up, and whose lived experiences are unquestionably Jewish.
Okay, that's great. We'll talk about those customs in a little bit. I'd like to just touch on what you said before about the concept of black and white. Now, you are darker skin complexion, I'm a whiter skin complexion. How is it possible we come from the same people?
You have siblings and I have siblings. And if we take a very, very closer look at the complexions, your sibling doesn't have your complexion, my siblings don't have my complexion. Move these individuals to different parts of the world. Move one to West Africa, where the equator, which is very, very close to the equator. Move the other one to Siberia, especially during the times when the environment was not, when we didn't have the resources to control the environment. Let the individuals depend on nature, whatever they could find. You will see over time the features will start to change. The ones in West Africa will begin to get darker because they won't have air conditioners. They would simply operate in the sun, rely on whatever they could lay hands on. But the ones in the north, with time, the nostrils will start to close, because if they keep on gulping in the very cold air, with time they will freeze to death. So they will start adjust, and over time, the adjustment will enter into the blood. The children will begin to take on the features too, that came about as a result of adjustment. We have seen these things happening. When we are younger, we were of course very, very light in complexion. If you take a look here, this part doesn't get exposed to the sun like this part. You see that this place is lighter. Likewise, if you take a picture, if you take a look at my children, they are much more lighter than I am now, but when I was their age, I was lighter than they are now.
I understand your answer. That's certainly how we can understand how humans around the globe have taken on different features. Let's say for the past 2,000 years, though, specifically when we're scattering, from my perspective, I don't find it to be a big deal that you have an ancient family of maybe hundreds of thousands of people scattering to four corners of the earth. And as we know about European Jews as well, they took on women from Europe to marry into the tribes. Genetic mixing was almost inevitable with the scattering of the house of Israel. So 2,000 something years later, we shouldn't be surprised that the descendants or the children of these people, which specifically we know the people of Israel weren't pure blood Israelite only, they allowed converts at the time as well. We just don't know who was marrying who at the time of the temples of King Solomon and the second temple, now that they scattered. So for you and I, we don't make that an issue, do we?
is not very, very important, because what unites us, even from the Torah itself, is the culture.
Right.
It's culture that makes Israel distinct, not biology.
So in a world today of racial tension, so to say, where people are divided by color, that simply doesn't exist between us.
It doesn't, because right from day one, Israel was never one color. Esau and Jacob were twins, but they had different colors. And if you moved on further, you will see that race was certainly not an issue in Israel. It was culture.
If that's the case, then we're giving too much time to this topic. Unfortunately, the world, they're still dealing with this, but we're beyond that, right?
We will help the world to resolve it.
We'll help the world, but we'll move forward in this conversation right now.
Yeah.
So now I'd like to ask you furthermore. You said that it's not a simple idea that was planted in your mind that you're from the people of Israel. You have oral tradition, and your entire culture reflects Israelite culture, so to say.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to give an example or one or two. Let me ask you a question first of all before you do. A simple thing, do you circumcise on the 8th day?
Every Igbo is circumcised on the 8th day, and the Igbo people have been circumcising their males on the 8th day since immemorial times. Yeah.
Fascinating. And now you have a word for the Torah or for God in your culture?
The Igbo word or the Igbo phrase for the Igbo culture is omenana. If you translate it to English, what you have is things, commandments you observe in the land.
That's interesting, because when you look at the Torah, a lot of it is based on the actual things that we have to do when we're in the land of Israel.
Yeah. We made sure we retain that, so that because the retention of that helped us to observe the commandments.
And now at the time that the Igbo went into exile, I'm trying to put this into perspective of when this happened so we understand what culture they might have retained and what happened in Israel after they left. So this was around the Babylonian exile, the Igbo were?
Yes. My studies, my probing indicates that we were the group that moved into Egypt, while you were the group that moved into Babylon. We are taken into Babylon.
Right, so historically, this was at the destruction of the first temple before the second temple was built.
Absolutely.
And the Jews, quote unquote, the Judeans, were exiled into Babylon, but not 100% of them went into Babylon. We even know some were left in the land, but a lot of them were exiled south into Africa as well. Yeah,
the Torah says that a large part of them trying to evade Babylon, which came to exact retribution for the killing of Gedaliah, moved into Egypt.
Okay.
Yeah.
And from Egypt, you can trace your travels all the way throughout Africa, where you ended up in Nigeria how many years ago?
We have been in Nigeria more than 1,000 years, but I think we lived around North Africa and other parts of West Africa for at least 1,000 years, and the roots are very, very clear. Because life continued in the roots until even modern times.
So here's where I'm going with this. So you left Israel at the time of the Babylonian exile. You were in Africa. So by the time that the Judeans returned to Israel with the second temple with Ezra and Nehemiah, and came back from, not all of them came back, but a large percentage did, they settled the land, and they started to codify the law and write down laws of Israel. And eventually, a few hundred years later, they redacted the laws and they made an oral law, and this became what the Jewish law is today. But by the time that was all happening, you were already deep in Africa, lost.
Yeah, but interestingly, to show you that those laws belong to all of Israel, we see those laws that the people that went to Babylon codified in Omenana. Yeah, everything that was codified and called the oral law, the Mishnah, Gemara, and the Talmud, you find them in Omenan as well, which means that the group in Babylon simply wrote it down, while the group that moved into Egypt and moved into the hinterland of Africa continue to live it.
And this is obviously what your books speak about a little bit.
Yeah.
I think on the title of your book you said the largest Jewish diaspora.
The Igbos and Israel, an intercultural study of the largest Jewish diaspora.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.